Wow, to live with our hearts wide open. And sometimes when we do, words just fail us, right? And I've been feeling that a little bit this morning. It just felt so good to walk in and see everyone gathering, doing their little things, putting it together, knowing that my talk is about, are you listening to your heart? And as I looked around, I just saw everybody here was in that space of the heart. And it was, overwhelming a little bit when Marvin started with that, come on people now, smile on your brother's song, and I saw him over there just looking at what he'd written, and Valerie's like, oh, that's one of my favorite songs, and everyone just jumped in. It's one of my favorite songs, and it's interesting because it has a very powerful history for me that I didn't realize how much it still touched me. But when I was a kid, after my parents got divorced, and my mom threw me and my brother out to live with my father, and my brother was driving us to school one day, and I don't know if any of you, actually probably most of you do, remember those push-button radios in the cars?
Yeah.
Push it to the other station.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we had it set to the 3 rock and roll stations. I think it was KHJ, I can't believe I remember, KRLA, and then there was one other one. And me and my brother had a little bit different idea of the music we liked to listen to. And so I turned on the radio, and that song came on. I'm like, oh, I love this song. And I turned it up, and I'm sitting there with my brother, so I'm kind of feeling it. And he looks over and pushes the button. And it wasn't even another song that, that he wanted to hear. He just didn't want me to hear my song, like big brothers do. So I pushed it back. He pushed it again. And I pushed it back. And then he pushed again and kind of held me so I couldn't do it. And so I reached up with my toe, pushed it again, and he reached over and started punching me. So, anyway, ultimately I pushed it back, and there was a thing you could do it was an old car, you could pull the things out. So I pushed it again, and I pulled the push buttons out before he could hit me, and jumped in the back. And I said, yelled from the back seat, maybe you better listen to the lyrics.
Maybe you better listen to the lyrics.
And I was in the back of the car, tears were coming down my eyes. I was going, it was that brotherly thing where there's all that stuff coming up. And, I've thought about that for many years. Whenever I hear that song, that comes up. And just hearing it today in the church with everyone around, and thinking about my relationship with my brother today, where so much healing and so much growth and so much acknowledgement of each other, of who we are, has gone on. It was just such a gift, such a wonderful gift. And, I realized that the heart speaks in emotion. The heart speaks in tears. The heart speaks from a place that's beyond intellectual. It's that place of connection, that place where you can't speak. And I was kind of feeling that first. I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to get up and read my talk. And then we went into How Great Thou Art. And when we talked about Bruno's birthday, and I know it's one of his favorite songs, that song was just, because we used to sing that at Unity of New York years ago, and I loved it. The singer used to get up and sing it. It's just so moving. And how great thou art, and how great thou art, and how great each of us is as an expression of that universe. I mean, I'm blown away by the spiritual journey that I've been on, and been, with yoga and meditation and chanting, the Hindu traditions. I've studied Buddhism. I've been involved with Unity for many, many years, and everything is saying the same thing. Everything is leading to the truth that we are the cutting edge of spirit in creation, conscious of this own creation, the fact that we can conceive of this universe of which we are a part. And what I keep coming back to is what I learned in the Catholic religion, and this is one of the things when I went to, so another part of my history, is I went to Catholic school for the first 3 years of my life because my parents thought I would get a better education. And they talked about predestination, that God knows what's going to happen even before you're born, and it's all planned out, and that's there. And that, as a child, was such a restrictive concept. When I heard that, it just seemed so wrong, and it felt claustrophobic to me. And fortunately, with my spiritual journey, I was able to throw out the things that didn't feel right from whatever tradition it is. But my feeling is today, right now, is that we are such a powerful and important part of that God Spirit because we are the feeling center of this creation. Through us, God or Divine Spirit is able to experience its creation. And that everything we feel, everything we think, every drama that comes up, every relationship we have, when my brother beats me up and I hit him, that's God going, wow, look at all this stuff I'm feeling. And we think in our ego mind that it's about trying to have everything be smooth and everything run nicely and everything be calm, when maybe the truth is that it's about feeling and being present in all of it, inviting it in and saying, yes, God the good, omnipotent. This is it. So my question is, from that point of view, where is our feeling center for God? Where does God exist and feel this universe? I don't think it's up in the head where we think. That's where we kind of judge and back and forth. But it's the heart center, right? It's the heart, maybe some of the solar plexus too, but this heart center. So last week we took a moment where we looked at each other, and I'd like to do that. I'd like everyone to pick someone just to turn and look at. If you don't have someone sitting next to you, feel free to look at me, but turn and look at someone next to you. Take them in. Take them in. Don't be afraid to really look. I know it's challenging, right? Suddenly to look at someone because you go up in your head. Now, if you're looking and there's some resistance coming up, move into your heart. Allow yourself to look at that person from that heart space. Be aware that there might be some mental stuff still going on, but breathe that person into your heart. Notice how it feels. Just to take that person in. And now you can bring your focus back up here, take me in from the same place. And I want you to notice quality in the space right now. Is it different? Has something changed? And so my question today, as we saw on the front bulletin board with a little makeshift question mark, which is starting to crumble, I noticed, is, are you listening to your heart? And are you listening from your heart? And are you seeing through the heart? You know, as I look back on that incident with my brother, seeing through the heart, there's nothing but love and compassion and an understanding that where we both were at that time in that, what we call now, it's dysfunctional family, and I don't think there is such a thing as a dysfunctional family. There are semi-functional families. They may not be functioning at the top, but if we survived to live to tell about it, it was functioning enough to give us what we needed, right? So I can have compassion for myself back then, and for my brother, and for the journey that we've taken. when things look like they aren't working, we want to pull ourselves away, we want to judge, we want to go into that place of despair, it's generally because we're not looking, listening, hearing, seeing from the heart. We're up in the head. The heart does not judge. The heart embraces, the heart feels, the heart makes space. And it's not an accident that we breathe into the heart, right? So our printer would not work this morning at Valerie's house, so I had a lot of notes. I'm kind of winging it from memory today, but I did have some things that I wanted to read. And the first is from the Tibetan Yogas of Dreams and Sleep. And what's interesting is so many of these different things that are coming to me with my different research that I'm doing for the Dream Team that started last week, and for the Presence process, they are affirming and mirroring what we talk about in here, in unity. So this quote, and I don't have my notes, so I'm not sure exactly how it fits in, but I will read it, and if I listen from my heart, it will become clear. They're talking about sleep practice, and the Tibetan Yogas of Dreams and Sleep are really about how to bring your spiritual practice into the dream state. So ultimately, you are always in the process of spiritual practice, waking and sleeping. One of the ways they do that is they encourage you to approach your life as a dream, to say each day as you're moving through your life, this is a dream. This is a dream that has specific rules and specific things. It's different than when we fall asleep. When we fall asleep, we can fly, we can, if something scares us, we can wake ourselves up and move back here. The physical dream state has certain strong rules. If you jump off a building, you're going to fall. If you stick your hand in a fire, you're going to get burned, and it's going to take a while for you to heal because the physical it spreads out over time and space. So we have a tendency to feel like it's more solid and it's more real. But I know when I did my past life regression, and with each life that I remembered, they always really were very clear and specific that you had to go to the end of your life and experience letting go of the body. And it was from that point of view that, number one, you got the real clear heart understanding of what that life was about. And I saw that nothing was ever wasted, that everything that happens has a purpose, has a reason, and much of it is just so you can get the experience and the soul can grow. But the other thing that I recognized was that I am not the body, that this, in a sense, is a wonderful dream state, a learning, dreaming classroom with these specific rules, that the rules are there because they're meant to help us to grow, to understand things on a very deep, intimate level. So, from the book, The Tibetan Yogas of Dreams and Sleep, they're talking about the sleep practice as opposed to the dreaming practice. And anyone who was here for the meditation this morning, my desire or my intent was really to bring you to that space of stillness, that space of just being present. And of course, when we think of falling asleep and not dreaming, because when we're dreaming there's still something wrong with falling asleep, we think of not being present at all, that we go somewhere else. And what they're encouraging us to do with these practices is to recognize that that sleep state, you can actually be conscious. And I don't quite understand it yet, but this explains a little bit, and it just, to me, it felt like it fit in nicely with what we're talking today. Sleep practice actually has no form, so there is nothing on which to focus. The practice and the goal are the same, to abide in the inseparable unity of clarity and emptiness beyond dualistic separation of perceiver and perceived. So in other words, duality melts away. We become that witness self, but there's no witness. We just simply are in that space. And what they really encourage you to do as you practice this is notice those moments as you're starting to fall asleep. Notice what the space is like. Notice when you go into that place where the conscious mind has stopped processing and you're just present. And it's a place that you can find hints of in your meditation. So they go on to say, there's no qualities of up or down, no inside or out, no top or bottom, no time or boundaries. There are no distinctions at all because there is no object for the mind to grasp. So just breathe into that. For our conscious ego mind, it can seem, well, what the heck are they talking about? But if you breathe into that in the heart center, just breathe into that space in the heart. For me, I can get a sense of that. There's a letting go. I still am able to see you, feel the energy in the room. But there's a sense of no separation, of nothing being different. So the other thing that I had written down was the wonderful quotes from, of course, our #1 teacher here at Unity, the one that both Myrtle and Charles Fillmore went to when they wanted to heal their lives, both physically and personally. And the quote was about, "All this and more ye shall do." And I wrote down all the stuff around the quote because it was very powerful. It was about, even if you don't believe in me, believe in my works. And he was talking about his miracles. But for us, his works are the works of the Father. And that's what he says. And when he says, "All this and more ye shall do," the reason he says that is because I will be with you for a short time, he said. I have come to teach you these things, share these things with you, and give you the gift of grace. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it here. The gift of grace, as I think we talked about last week, is the letting go of karma. The letting go of tit for tat. You have to do this, you have to repent for your sins, you have to make up for what you've done in the past. The gift of grace comes through forgiveness. All you need to do is ask for forgiveness and really being willing to forgive yourself. Because the truth is, God does not judge us. There's nothing for God, from his point of view or from the divine's point of view, to forgive. It's up to us to forgive ourselves. And as we do, we open to God's grace, which is basically, ask and it shall be given. Be like the lilies of the field. They do not toil. They just open to that spirit. And so what he said in this quote around all this and more ye shall do, he says, I came to share this gift with you. And I came from the Father, and I of myself can do nothing. But it is the Father that works through me. And he says, when I leave you after giving you these gifts and these teachings, I will be with my Father, and I will be with you. So through me, so he really became to say, I am the intermediate, spirit manifest in flesh. And we can look at it as some divine plan that was supposed to happen and he was the anointed one, or we can look at it as he was just one of us that tuned into that inner connection to the point that he shared it in metaphorical ways. But I think what he was sharing, and this is certainly true if you go to the Indian tradition where I shared about it during the meditation this morning, that the lost years of Jesus, there's an awful lot of evidence that he was in India studying with the great masters, meditation, yoga, learning to really tune into the divine power that flows through us, that flows through our different chakras, these energy centers. And so his ability to tune into that energy and begin to manifest on the planet brings more energy into the planet. In the Tibetan books of dreams and yoga, they say prayer is a forgotten, lost, powerful tool that we don't use. Call on Buddha. Call on the great saints. Call on the ones that have done this for whatever you need. It's the same thing Christ was telling us. Ask through me for the divine energy of the Father to flow through you. And to me, that's what listening to the heart is. It's listening to that divine energy that is within us. It's not something out there. We learn that through unity. That God is not some man up in the clouds with a big beard and a staff who's going to smite you if you do wrong and going to reward you if you do good. Because that God energy, there is no There's nothing wrong. There's nothing but good. So the other thing I want to share with you moves along with this idea of being willing to ask for help and open to it. But what I like about this next piece is it's even more personal, because it's easy for us because there's so much stuff around Jesus. You know, he's had quite a few spin doctors taking him on and telling you what it's about. But the more we can get that personal connection to spirit or to that divine energy that's outside this waking dream and is tuned into those other realms where magic is so available to us. And it also is a way of helping. So much of this dream work is about melding those two worlds, saying there's no separation, really being able to tune into those two parts of consciousness, the waking consciousness and our sub or unconscious, or what they call the superconscious, which is connected to spirit and our soul. So in Dreaming the Soul Back Home, his work is really through the shamanic traditions, which what I really like about the shamanic traditions is that they blossomed throughout the world in many, many different cultures and civilizations, and they were all about moving into that other realm through ritual, through drumming, through sweat lodges, through sacred herbs. But ultimately, as these separate cultures in many separate traditions developed this shamanic, and we have, it's not just the native cultures of the people of color who have shamanic traditions. We, the Caucasians, have many shamanic traditions as well, from many different cultures in Europe. All of these different cultures came back with very similar symbols, very similar stories, very similar understanding of that divine realm. So to me, that says that other world that we go to in dreams, that we go to in our imagination, is very powerful and very real. And it's an indication that there is only one power and one presence that connects us all. It's our soul place now. I want to see if I can find. Here we go. And what he's talking about here is the double on the balcony. And this is Robert Moss, a really wonderful, amazing man from Australia, who was very, very sick at a young age. So he spent a lot of time in bed, a lot of time in very deep coma or deep states. They wasn't sure if he was going to live for many years. And because of that, he opened a door to that other world. His dream life became very vivid, very powerful. He began getting guides through his dreams. He was in Australia, but he began dreaming about this Iroquois woman who came to him and began speaking to him in a native Iroquois language, which he had to actually find someone else who began to help translate it. So very interesting, powerful connections he made. And the double on the balcony. In dreams and in the liminal state of hypnagogia, which hypnagogia, a very fancy word, which just means that state you go into as you're falling asleep and as you wake up, where your mind is very suggestive, you're still conscious, but you're
kind of suspended.
Yeah, you're kind of in that suspended state. And of course, hypnagogia, it's similar to the hypnosis state, that place where you're just very suggestible, very open, your unconscious or subconscious is very present. In the dream and in the liminal state of hypnagogia, I've encountered a second self, one who has knowledge and skills that are lacking in my waking self. He inhabits a different kind of time. He does not suffer from the illusion that the rules of Newtonian physics apply to him. He can survey events and situations in my life and in the fortunes of countries. From a place above, as a boy, I might inspect the layout of a model. From a place above, as a boy, might inspect the layout of a model train course, or a girl might open the back of a doll's house and peek at the rooms inside. He travels ahead of me on the roads of the possible future. He steps in and out of time and moves between parallel worlds the way you and I might get in and out of an elevator. He shares knowledge with me that is not available to me from any other self. He told me once, I am not your double in this life, I am the more of you that you forgot. So I invite you to imagine that you may have a double self. And maybe in our Christian tradition we might call it our guardian angel. But there is a you that exists in that other realm. There is a you that you meet or may even meld with in your dream state. That divine knowledge, that place of all-knowing is available to each and every one of us in every moment. But we have not been trained to open to that or trust that. We've been trained only to trust what we're told from the outside, what our parents told us, what we read in books. But the vast, amazing, unlimited, infinite knowledge and wisdom is way beyond whatever we can see in this physical world. And it's available to each and every one of us only through our own self, only through that inner door, only through listening to and from our heart. During the presence process, which we're starting officially next week, and I wanted to make sure that I remembered to invite anyone in this community who's interested in doing the presence process with me. I'm glad to offer it to you on a love offering basis. We do it Saturday mornings, 11:30. We have our check-in call, so you can do it via teleconference. It would mean buying the book and moving through it. We will do it again, and I would love to actually do it just in this community. But if anyone wants to do it with us this time, it's Saturdays, and it'll be for 10 weeks starting this Saturday, and I can share more about that with you. But what happened on Saturday is one of the new members of the presence process, and we just started doing this. We haven't actually we had our introduction session week before yesterday, and then yesterday we had our second introduction section because we're reading through the first parts of the book. So no one's actually started doing the practices. And these practices ultimately aren't about necessarily creating miracles or going into these other places, but he's very clear that as we move into present moment awareness and open to the presence, which is just his word of saying spirit or God or the divine energy, that we open up into that vast place of all-knowing and information. So she's sitting in the beauty parlor, and this woman walked in, and she just had this initial dislike for this woman. Something about it, there was this energy there. And so she kind of looked at it, because the book invites you just to look at feelings that come up. And she said, oh, she's reading the same book I am. She just got that hit. And so she picked up her book and opened it purposely so the woman could see it. The woman walked by and she said, oh my God, I'm reading that book. So she, in that moment, got that information. And when she looked at that feeling that at first was, oh, I don't like this woman, when she tuned into it, it was actually spirit trying to say, hey, there's a connection here. And so how often do we have inner guidance, but because it's unfamiliar, we don't know what it is, we just push it away because it's an uncomfortable feeling. Whereas if we're really willing to invite it in, say, what is this? Asking from the heart, that we get an answer. And what I want to encourage you to do as I let go of today's talk is be willing to ask questions from that heart space. And when you do, let go of the need to have an answer right away. Trust that the answer will come. Listen and speak and see and hear and look from the heart. And so now is the time, since we've decided to do this now is the time to invite you to open to the idea of abundance. From the heart space, as we move into our heart, we watched Marvin's talk, Marvin's beautiful songs that he chose this morning. And I just want to say again that, the synchronicity of what my talk is and what Marvin puts together is always so powerful and so wonderful. And as we tuned into the heart and we focused on those songs that we sang and we looked at each other in the room, that idea of openness and ever-present energy, ever-present life. As we did our meditation at the beginning, and we felt the breath and became aware that that breath is this invisible substance that's all around us, and there's abundance. You know, just because I take a huge breath doesn't mean you get less. There's always more. And the gift is that what we exhale, the carbon dioxide, the trees and the green things, they take in and they turn back into oxygen, which is what enlivens us. So as we move towards our time of giving the offering and sharing our abundance with the church, I want you to, number one, always know that your presence is the gift here. So if ever you have a lack of funds, it's never mandatory that you give. You showed up here, we're feeling your energy, you're giving your love. But when and if you do decide to give, endow that substance with light, with life, with what you want to create in your own life. So as you give it to the church to help us stay here and blossom and share what we have to share with the community, visualize what you want to be flowing back to you. And if you get powerful experiences here, if you feel your heart open, trust that whatever you put in that love offering basket is multiplied and manifesting that energy of love and divine substance. So now I'm going to turn it over to Valerie. Thank you so much.